Hello and welcome. For my presentation on opera and musical theater, I'll be focusing on Lucia di Lammermoor, which is an opera by Donizetti with Camerano as the librettist. Just so we're all on the same page with some background about it, Lucia was premiered in 1835. It's set in Scotland, which was a fascinating area for the time. It's set in Scotland in the 1700s. It's the classic forbidden love story, very Romeo and Juliet-esque. Lucia is a young woman who's in love with a man she's not allowed to be in love with. Her brother wants her to marry someone for the sake of the family that she doesn't love. There's a lot of terrible manipulation that goes into it. She ends up marrying the man she doesn't love. Her true love barges in on the wedding scene and declares her unfaithful. Lucia can't take it and goes crazy, and in a dramatic turn of events, murders her husband on her wedding night, comes back to the party, ends up dying herself, and then her true love, distraught over what he's done, commits suicide, and that is the end of the opera, this dramatic suicide on stage. Since its premiere, it's become a real staple of the opera repertoire all across the world, really being performed pretty consistently since its premiere. It's a really shining example of opera just from the Romantic era and the opera genre in general. It doesn't stray too much from what you expect of an opera. We have the definitive characteristic of the Romantic era, that association with death, as we see the murder of the husband, we see Lucia die, and then we see the dramatic suicide on stage as well, so that association with death that's so common in the Romantic era. Another commonality of the Romantic era is this expansion of the orchestra. At this point, we have essentially a full orchestra in the pit, with a full woodwind, brass, and string section, as well as the addition of the harp in the string section, the piccolo in the woodwind section, and depending on the situation, glass harmonica, not very likely today. In the percussion section, we're expanding as well, adding things like tubular bells and cymbals and bass drum outside of just the traditional timpani. Lucia is absolutely part of the traditional Italian opera tradition. We have aria and recitative. There's no spoken word here like you would get in German or English opera styles. It's absolutely opera seria. The audience is on the edge of their seat the whole time with tension. There's no comedic relief in this story at all. It's just upsetting thing after upsetting thing coming one after the other. And absolutely, we're in the height of the bel canto style, which was a staple of Donizetti's writing, and we'll talk a little bit more about that on this next slide. The bel canto style, we see it with the highly emotional subject matter of Lucia, where we've got this tension of I love one man, but I'm not allowed to be with him, and we see that in the singing and the writing for Lucia, and the legato versus staccato, and the emphasis that we put on different words because of their emotional aspects. And absolutely, we're showing off the skills not only of the performers, but specifically of the soprano who's playing Lucia. This is most prevalent in what is definitively the most famous scene from Lucia di Lammermoor, which is the mad scene. In this scene, Lucia has been married, she's been declared unfaithful by her true love, and then we're at the reception, and Lucia walks in covered in blood because she's just murdered her new husband. This is a definitive bel canto aria where we have extremely technical and expressively demanding material for the soprano, and oftentimes, as was typical of the bel canto style, we have ornamentation being added beyond what was originally written by Donizetti, being added by the soprano. It's an incredible scene where you really get to feel the emotions of it, which is so typical of the Romantic era, that we're getting more invested emotionally in the story and what's going on, and we can feel how Lucia has gone crazy, and then leading to her eventual death and the death of her lover. So that's how Lucia di Lammermoor fits in with the opera and Romantic traditions.